Chapter 6. Emily was indeed the star attraction of the carnival. People who couldn't afford to spend money at the sideshows would still bring their children back night after night to laugh at the antics of the clown they called Bongo. They never heard the clown speak. Words didn't matter. The fun lay in seeing the tall figure sprawl at the slightest impact with a tree, a chair, another person, of seeing the dull-witted bewilderment with which the clown got out of one troubled situation into another. The Bleegans and Edward C. scampered around Bongo, teasing and tormenting, luring him into trouble, and then pretending to pummel and pinch him to punish his stupidity. The kids loved it, because, as Emily explained to me, they saw Edward C. and the Bleegans as being little like themselves, and seeing a grown-up clown outwitted by the childish-looking dwarf men was not only funny, but satisfying to the young. Personally, I could have clouded the little monsters, and I told Emily so, but she only smiled and asked me to think of the clowns I had once laughed at and to remember what it was that made me laugh. She was right. I had been a little monster, too. I had been gleeful when the silly clown fell flat or was punished for being stupid, but that was long before I knew a clown named Emily. Each day's work was long and strenuous for her. She was on the grounds constantly, mingling with the crowds, bumping and tumbling, in a continuous effort to win a few laughs from people who were not too ready for laughter. At closing time, she would gather her 3 sleeping children from Pete Harris's tent and would walk wearily outside the gates over to the boxcar which was their home. She nearly always stopped beside my piano to say good night. I would wait for her there if my chores were finished first. Emily's good night came to be a small spot of joy for me in a day that was often tedious and monotonous. She always ate breakfast with us before she put her makeup on for the day. After that, I seldom saw her except at a distance during working hours. But there were a few times when the crowds were nearly gone and the lights dim that Emily had a chance to stand beside my piano and listen as I played the way I wanted to play. Then I would improvise some of the melodies that were in my mind, trying out variations in minor keys, softly and with a tenderness that was all for her. Eventually, I'd return to the original major key with a lot of fanfare, which was my way of boasting to her of my skill. Mostly, she would just stand and listen, smiling to herself but saying nothing. One night, though, she leaned forward and spoke to me softly. "You have a gift, Josh. Don't let these times make you lose sight of it." I was restless during these weeks. Joey and I kept waiting for Lonnie to return, and when he didn't, we knew that he must have lost his job, as he had feared. I took $3 out of the precious 10 that Pete Harris had given me after my first 2 weeks of work and put them in a letter to Lonnie. Joey added $1 of the money he had earned at running errands, and we wrote Lonnie that this was the first installment on the money we owed him. We felt good when we mailed that letter. We bought one another gifts for Christmas, and we were so excited about buying something other than food that we opened our packages days before Christmas arrived. I bought a bright blue shirt for Joey with a chocolate bar slide in the breast pocket, and he gave me an imitation leather wallet to hold my newly acquired wealth. I don't know when a gift had ever pleased me so much. That wallet gave me a sense of well-being when I put it into my hip pocket. Moreover, it had several interesting compartments, as well as an identification card, which I filled out proudly. There was a line which stated, "In case of accident, please notify." I started to write Stefan Grandowski on that line. Then I thought better of it and wrote Lon Broomer, and added the Omaha address he'd given us. Still, in spite of the unforgiving streak in me, I kept thinking of home as Christmas drew near. On the warm, gentle nights when the noise of the carnival had subsided, I would often take long walks, wondering as I walked if there were still the lines of men in front of employment offices back in Chicago, wondering if Kitty had managed to get a job, wondering 100 times about Mom. When Joey wrote a note home to tell them of my job, to let them know we were well, I gave him $1 to add to the one he was placing in the letter. Joey wrote, "Josh and I are sending you this money for Christmas." He asked me if I wanted to sign the letter, and for a moment I really wanted to write my name beside his. But I said, "Nah, I guess not," and he sealed the letter without saying anything more about it. I thought a great deal about Emily during these days, not the Emily who clowned all day, but the Emily who met us at breakfast and stopped beside my piano late at night. The beautiful Emily, with great purple eyes and a sweet oval face above the clown's ruff. They were sad, these thoughts of Emily. Somewhere I had gained the impression that love makes one happy, but that was not true for me. Love only hurt me. It hurt the way uncertainty and hopelessness did. One night, as I waited for her to come past my piano and say good night, I heard her youngest boy wailing sleepily as she herded the 3 of them home. When I saw her stoop to lift the boy in her arms, I ran to her and offered to carry him piggyback to the boxcar. He whimpered at first, and then let his head droop to my neck, where he sighed and went back to sleep. Emily walked beside me, hand in hand with the other two boys, and none of us spoke as we picked our way along the railroad ties that led up to their home. When we laid the children on their beds, I stepped outside and Emily followed me. She sat down on the lowest step of the car, pulling the skull cap from her bright hair. "Sit down for a minute, Josh," she said. "I've been wanting to talk to you." She paused, looking at me directly. "Is something troubling you lately?" "No," I said, "just the blues." "It's a time for the blues, isn't it?" "I ought to be thankful that I have a job." "Well, I am. It's just—" I didn't know how to finish the sentence. "You're lonely, Josh. I've realized that. It's too bad that there aren't any young people of your age in the carnival. I've been wishing I knew some nice girls, someone you'd enjoy taking to a movie now and then." I shook my head. We both sat silent and stared out into the night for a while. Then, before I knew what I was going to say, I blurted out what was pent up inside me. "I wish you were a girl, Emily. I'd give anything in the world if you were a girl my age." As soon as the words were out, I grew rigid with dismay at what I had revealed. She looked down at the long flapping shoes of her clown costume for a few moments. Then she turned to me and smiled. "If I were a girl your age, I'd be very proud to know you cared for me, Josh." "But you don't like it that I care for you now, do you?" She leaned forward and clasped her hands around my knees. Her face was very sober, and there was a slight frown between her eyes. "You know, Josh, there are women who become very vain when a younger man tells them what you've told me. I'm not vain. I think I'm grateful. It's right to be grateful for every bit of honest affection that comes one's way, isn't it?" "I was afraid you'd think I was a fool," I muttered. "Then you don't know me very well. I think of you as a sensitive, talented boy, a bit on the stubborn side, but never a fool." She leaned toward me. I think she started to kiss my cheek, but she changed her mind and offered me her hand instead. Then she led her left hand over mine and made the handshake a little caress. I didn't want to leave her, but I knew I must. When I got to my feet, I stood looking down at her for a minute, and she smiled at me. It was a smile, I realized, such as she so often gave to Joey. "Good night, dear Josh," she said. "Good night, and thank you."